You have a purpose. You matter. You're as unique as your fingerprint. If you need to be reminded of that, look at your fingerprint. I know that I sometimes have to look at my own fingerprint and remind myself that I have a purpose in this world, that I matter, that I am loved. Sometimes we can feel like we're not loved by somebody or we're going through a difficult time, and you are so loved. Welcome back to the new season of the One Girl Revolution podcast. Let's go. We have 137 episodes, and this will be 138, and we have so much more to come. My name is Kate Bryan, and I'm the host of the One Girl Revolution podcast and founder of our nonprofit, One Girl Revolution. One Girl Revolution is a multimedia platform, a podcast, and a nonprofit dedicated to highlighting the stories of inspiring women and girls who are changing the world through their lives. We want to hear from you, so message us, follow us on social media, and share your stories with us. We want to get to know you and the One Girl Revolutions in your life. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. We're on YouTube at One Girl Revolution. That's the number One Girl Revolution. And you can find our podcast, videos, social media links, and everything else on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. We are so excited to be back for this new season, and this week's episode is a really special one. Our friend Brooke Baldwin is back on the One Girl Revolution podcast, but this time she turns the tables and she interviews me about my life and One Girl Revolution. Brooke formerly had her own show on CNN. She's the author of the recent book Huddle, and she's dedicated her life to empowering other women and encouraging women to support their sisters and to huddle. Check out episode 136 of the One Girl Revolution podcast to hear Brooke's inspiring story, to hear about her book and all of her incredible work. But this week, Brooke and I sit down to talk about One Girl Revolution. I loved spending this time with Brooke, and I'm so honored that she took the time to help me tell the One Girl Revolution story in a new way. I hope that you enjoy our conversation. So without further ado, let's go, girls! Brooke, I am so excited to have you back here on the One Girl Revolution podcast, but we are going to do things a little bit different this time around. So we're actually going to turn the tables, and I'm so grateful for you for your generous offer to sit with me and talk about One Girl Revolution. And I just feel like you and I have so much synergy and so much commonality in the things that we care about and the things that we're working on. And so I can't wait to see how this friendship continues to grow and evolve. But we're going to turn the tables. You're the one in the hot seat right now, Kate Bryan. This is so fun. You know, I like to ask loads of questions. And so this is so fun for me. And I'm so honored that you're allowing me to pepper you with my own curiosity over your sort of just life arc. I so admire you and how you had this whole existence and were thriving in Washington, D.C. And then you were like, you know what, going back to my roots, going back to Michigan. We'll get into all of that. But first, as you begin all of your podcasts, may I ask you, who is a One Girl Revolution in your life? Who's a woman or a girl who really inspires you? You know, Brooke, just like you, there's so many women in my life, women that I talk to every single day, women that I surround myself, obviously you, so many of the women that I've highlighted on the One Girl Revolution podcast, the women that we've highlighted, and I know we're going to talk about the documentaries, but so many women that I've encountered. And I feel like there's such an army through the One Girl Revolution network that I've met. Obviously my mom is a huge One Girl Revolution in my life. She's inspired me in so many different ways, but one that really kind of has been on my heart lately is Miss Willa. And she's this woman out of Athens, Texas, and she has a catering company. And I met her a couple of years ago, reached out to her via Facebook and just said, hey, can I come down to Texas and hang out with you? And she was like, yeah, sure. Come on down. So she has a catering company, but then in her quote unquote free time, which I don't know how she has free time, she drives around Athens, Texas and delivers food through her organization, Feeding Kids Right to children in need. And every single day she's feeding hundreds of kids, and it's funded through her catering company. So Miss Willa is one of the One Girl Revolutions that I've been reflecting on a lot lately.
And can I just put in just noting, and I know this is how you roll, Kate Bryan, but for so many people who read about folks who feel inspired, to know that you just reached out and you said, hey, can I come down to Texas? And I give you huge, just kudos for doing that kind of thing. And for people listening, even if they have people in their own communities, what little nugget of advice would you offer them if people are a little shy or don't quite want to get out of their bubble, but really want to meet someone else like that to be inspired?
That's a great question, Brooke. And I think so many people, we want to do something, right? We want to make a difference, but we don't know how. And sometimes maybe we donate money or maybe we donate our time to something, but we can be a little bit nervous, especially going to do something for the first time ever.
Yes.
And the greatest things that I have ever done, and this podcast would not be around, One Girl Revolution as a platform wouldn't be around had I not literally cold called many of the first women that were on the podcast. And I still do it today. I still cold call and reach out to people. And so I just would encourage anybody, if they see a story that inspires them, if they see an organization that inspires them, whether it's on TV or on social media, reach out to that organization and find out how you can get involved. And that's really what I did with Miss Willa. I was like, hey, I love what you're doing. It's really inspiring to me. I want to spend time with you. I think that we should all make more of an effort to spend time with people that inspire us and that drive us. And I think it kind of puts a lot of the difficulties that we go through on a daily basis in perspective. You know, there's so many difficulties that we're experiencing every single day, especially with COVID and, you know, turning on the news, you see so many dark, difficult things that the world is going through right now. But if you pull yourself out of that and you just take a second and say, hey, this person inspired me, I want to spend time with them. It can change your perspective, your complete life perspective.
And you may be surprised how many people actually say yes.
Right.
Which is the kind of a cool segue into, you know, for people listening where they're like, wait, why is Brooke Baldwin interviewing Kate Bryan? Like okay. So it wasn't a cold call, but it was an email from our mutual friend who is over at NPR, Eric Maripodi. Podi, shout out to you. What I remember from this email, I was minding my own business. It was, I don't know, some point last year. And he's like, hey, I've met a woman who I think you'll really dig. And then there was something in the email about a missed flight and a bear. Can you just give us the quick, skinny on that before we continue on?
You asked me about this question. Yeah. So this is how the universe works or how the world works. Sometimes you just have to say yes, right? Like you said.
Yes.
And I was flying back from a wedding and had to be in South Bend, Indiana for this conference. And Eric Maripodi was coming. And randomly he called me at the airport. I was in Detroit picking up my car to drive down to South Bend. And we had both missed our flights ultimately to South Bend. There are no flights that go into South Bend. So I was like, whatever, I'll pick up my car. He calls me from the airport and he's like, hey, Kate, I'm in the airport. I'm not going to make it to the event. And I was like, which airport are you at? And he was like, Detroit. I was like, great. I'm driving around. We had never met in person, which is hysterical. Amazing. And we're going to drive 3.5 hours together. So I pick him up from the airport at like 11 p.m. at night and we drive 3.5 hours together. You better believe, Brooke, by the end of that car ride, we became BFFs.
I'm sure.
Talked about everything from our life stories to One Girl. He was like watching The Girl Inside, the documentary. We started talking about you. He was like, oh my gosh, you need to meet my friend Brooke. Let me text her right now. And so he was like texting you from the car. And then craziest story of all time, at like 2 a.m, we're driving and a big black bear runs out into the middle of the freeway, into the highway, and then turns around and runs away. And both of us were like, did we just see a bear? And so then that became the joke for the rest. It still is the joke. Like every time I email him, like, P.S., how are the bears doing in Washington, D.C.? And so, yeah, he brought up the bear in the email to you.
Yep. Therefore,
So
I was
funny.
like, who is this girl who's seeing the black bear with my friend Eric Maripodi? Yes, I need to know her. And so, yes, we've become friends and have been able to mind meld over, you know, similarities. I want to go back. I want to go back into the early archive of Kate. So where did you grow up? How did you grow up? Tell me that story. Who was little girl Kate Bryan?
Yeah. So I am one of 4 kids, Brooke. I grew up in a small town in Michigan called Brighton. And I'm second oldest girl. So people always joke about how the oldest girl is the boss. And I 100% was the boss of the family. As a little kid, I was this feisty, opinionated, very thoughtful, of course. Like I was very thoughtful and like helping other people and wanted to make a difference. And like, even at 4 years old, I was trying to do like lemonade stands to help local organizations or people in need. And so I was just this little, like, probably entrepreneur from a young age. And my parents used to joke that when I got older, and this is when I was 3 or 4 years old, they would joke that I was either going to be the dictator of a small nation or the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And
Czar
because I was
Kate.
like bossing my siblings around and like they would follow me and listen to whatever I was doing. And so I went from being that little kid to at the same time, I had been diagnosed with this really rare immune deficiency called Job syndrome. And my sister and I both have it. And that when we were diagnosed at University of Michigan, I was 4 years old. There were only 25 documented cases in the world.
Oh my goodness.
Right now,
what
there
is
are
it?
only 250 cases. So in the world, 250 cases this moment in time in the world. And Job syndrome is a lot of different things, but our bodies make way more white blood cells than red. So we can't fight off infection. So with COVID, everybody was really worried about us possibly getting it and not being able to fight it off. But then also you get all kinds of lesions and terrible skin conditions. So how it manifested in me was I had terrible, terrible eczema all over my face. You look at my little kid school pictures, my little face is like all red and raw. And even as a little baby. And now flash forward, we know so many different things. Like I'm allergic to gluten, I'm allergic to dairy. These were things that they didn't know a long time ago. And so that's definitely helped my skin. But I went from being this feisty little kid who happened to have eczema. And then when I got into school, I just completely stopped talking. Like I became a completely different person. I wouldn't talk. I didn't want to raise my hand.
Why? Why did that happen, you think?
Because it happened because so many kids were bullying me if I raised
Because
my
of your
hands.
eczema, because of how you
Kids
looked.
would mock my skin and eczema and like, oh, look at little red face. I wouldn't get invited to birthday parties, and it was very clear. The kids would tell me that I wasn't invited because I had rash. So all kinds of, and we all have these experiences. I feel like, everybody has had something where it's like, you wear glasses or you're not pretty enough or you're short or you're tall or all these different things. And so that was really a part of my story. And so anyways, I went from being this feisty little kid to not talking at all. And then somewhere along the line, I found my magic feather. My mom made me take Irish dancing, and she was like, you have to stand up in front of people. And I didn't want to stand up in front of people, even though a couple years before I was all about it. And, but Irish dancing was my magic feather and reminded me of that little girl, the girl that I was created to be, the woman that I was created to be. And so what's interesting, Brooke, is looking back now where I am now doing One Girl Revolution, I never really realized why it was so important to me to elevate women's voices or build a platform for women's voices and their stories to be heard. But kind of in the past year, I've realized it's because I experienced not being heard. I experienced being silenced. I experienced being marginalized, being ignored by other kids in school and even by adults. I mean, adults can be just as bad as kids, where parents were obviously not inviting me to the birthday parties because I had rash. So anyways, I just think that looking back on my story, it's like, wow, it's really profound to me that it took that experience to now. That's really why I care so deeply about women having the space and having the platform for their voices to be heard, to be listened to, and for the world to pay attention to them.
Wow, Kate, you just would never know. I mean, I'm staring at you, this gorgeous face and this beautiful heart, and you just wouldn't know, what you had to endure as a little kid and how that gave you the not just the sympathy, but the empathy for so many girls and women who, may feel ostracized or lonely or in a corner. And especially now in this time where we're feeling extra lonely because of this pandemic, you really can offer some feels in a way that I think a lot of others can't. That's so beautiful. And that also makes me wonder about your studying in Ireland from your Irish dancing. We're going to get to that in a second, but all the bells are sort of going off for me. Okay. So fast forward to, you grow into this, strong, confident, Irish dancing lass, and how then connect the dots for me. How did you get into media and PR? Why did you want to do that?
Yeah, that's a really great question too. And I think a lot of people are like, yeah, how did you go from like being, this little Michigan girl to then working?
I mean,
in
you're not running a small
then,
country,
right?
So why media?
I'm not quite the CEO of a Fortune 500 company yet. But that may come
on your way.
Either of those are still probably possible. But so it was really a big turning point. So I went to school and just went to a liberal arts school. I didn't know what I wanted to study. So I just got a bachelor's in liberal arts. I was always
Don't say
interested in, I know.
thank you very much. I'm a liberal arts gal too. I think that's pretty outstanding.
It's great. Yeah, no, it's great. And I'm so glad that I did it. And I was always interested in like radio and media, and the school that I went to didn't really have a thriving program in communication. So I never really kind of got into it in college.
Mm-hmm.
And then, not to get super political, because I try to kind of stay away from politics on this podcast, but in 2008, that 2008 election, I was fascinated by politics. And I think that everybody can relate to that. It was so interesting to me, like all the dialogue and debates and, who was being chosen for both the parties. And then everything, just, it was fascinating to me, political communication and dialogue and debate. And then that was around the same time that Facebook was really starting to take off and more people were joining Facebook. And I just was soaking it up, Brooke. I wanted to be a part of every single discussion, and I had so many thoughts and I wanted to ask all these questions and like all these things. And so it really was that election that led me to get into PR. So around a couple months later, I ended up applying to a program in Ireland to do a master's degree in public affairs and political communication. And this particular program, Ireland. And my family's from there. I'd been there numerous times. They speak English, obviously. So it was like easy to get around. So I applied, got in, and then like within 3 weeks, I had sold my car, quit my job at AT&T, and then moved to Ireland and lived there for 2.5 years and studied.
Were you showing off your dance moves? Was that reason
every
number
once in
one?
a while? I mean, it was my party trick. I don't really do that anymore, Brooke, because I'm like, I feel like I'm a little
somebody's
bit
getting married at some point, and somebody needs to slide on in an Irish jig.
I might have to bring it back. We'll see. But that's always my party trick in Ireland too. I lived there for 2.5 years, and then
what was that like?
It was amazing. It was amazing to live there and just to learn. I think for all of us, it's so important to have a different perspective. And so even though, people look at Ireland and see like, oh, it's so whimsical and beautiful, it was really hard sometimes, especially working in politics. I worked for the Senate, and, you see the best of things and the worst of things going on. I did a lot of work with the media over there. You see the best of things going on and the worst of things, but that's life.
Tell me a tough story. Tell me a tough story.
Oh man, about Ireland.
Just about your experience, because it does seem so ethereal and lovely and green and lush and beer filled,
I think that, one thing that was difficult is I was the program had never accepted a foreigner before, not from anywhere else in Europe and definitely not from America. And so that was something. I feel so grateful to be born and raised in this country. I love America, but I definitely felt like there was a separation there between my college colleagues, my fellow students and even professors, where there was a disconnect because I didn't experience the things that they did growing up, and their perspective on the world was very different from mine. And I learned so much from those experiences, but it could be really difficult and it could feel really isolating at times being the only foreigner. But I think it was good for me too, because it really taught me empathy in a new way. And it taught me to look in those situations. And now I do that. I feel myself doing that all the time with One Girl. It's like, I'm always looking for the people that are in the periphery, or people that are in the trench, people that you might not see at first glance. And so I think I kind of fit in because I have the map of Ireland on my face. And so people just were like, oh, she's just another Irish girl. Even though I was very much American, walking around and living in Ireland. But I'm so grateful for that time. And I'm so grateful for those experiences looking back, even though the times it was difficult. But Ireland is just like everywhere else too, Brooke. Like that's what I had to remind myself is like, they have their own struggles. Their country has their own struggles. Their political system has the same struggles that we do. There's so many facets to it, and it's fun to go visit somewhere. But then when you actually live somewhere, it just opens your eyes up to,
No, just underscoring your point. I mean, my husband is English, and I thought just the same, all right, we speak the same language. I know he's a quote unquote foreigner, but this is going to be easy. And what I've learned over the last course of however many years we've been together is it is such a different culture. Sometimes we joke, I'm like, are you speaking American or are you speaking English? Like, it's just, it is so different culturally. And of course the politics are different too. And to be somewhere, it's one thing to visit, but it's another thing to live, and to live in a place as you did for 2+ years. That just opens your aperture to the world and having different perspectives, which, you were able to bring back to Washington. So then you move back to DC, you go work in PR and media for more than 6 years. And that's when the seeds of One Girl Revolution started being planted. Talk me through that. Talk me through that time in your life.
Yeah. So I left Ireland because I just felt like I, was either building my life over there, my life and career in Ireland, or I was going to move back to the States. And so I wasn't quite ready to move back to Michigan. So I was like, well, DC makes sense. I should do some time in DC.
Do some time.
Never thought, you're right. That's how I always feel. I'm like, yeah, I did my time in DC. But I ended up there over 6 years, and I never thought that I would be there that long. And again, like, I'm so grateful for those experiences. And so
what years were you there?
I was there 2012 to 2018.
Okay.
End of 2011 to 2018. Just
wondering which administrations the air sort of changes in Washington depending who's in office.
It was wild.
Yeah.
And I know in your episode of the podcast, like, we talk about some of the things. It's just like a wild time to be in DC and be covering politics and working in that area. And so a lot of things were happening in DC, and at kind of at the 5.5, 6 year mark, I just felt like I was restless. I was like ready to do something different. And I started really paying attention to what was going on in the media and what I was experiencing every single day working in PR, and conversations I was having with reporters and producers. And I just started realizing that there were so many stories that weren't being told and that weren't being told. Everything in DC is just so political and politicized and divisive, honestly. Check out One Girl Revolution's YouTube channel and hit subscribe for more podcast episodes, short documentaries, and other video content. The Girl Inside features the powerful story of a professor who teaches a life-changing storytelling class to incarcerated women at Cook County Jail. The second documentary from One Girl Revolution is coming soon, so make sure that you're the first to know by subscribing to One Girl Revolution on YouTube.
What were you doing for those 5 years? Explain for people, like, when you say you're working for PR media, what did that mean?
So I was
pitching.
So I was pitching all kinds of stories. I was always looking for stories to pitch to reporters. I was meeting with reporters and asking what they were working on, and then trying to work with them to find interesting stories. And some were organizations or individuals that I was working with. But I also just have such a passion for storytelling that most of these reporters and producers became friends, because and still now, I barely do any PR work, but I still have all these relationships because I still call them and be like, hey, Eric Maripodi, you need to cover this story, or what about this? I just came across this, and I think this is something that needs to be covered. And even with One Girl Revolution, sometimes a story might not fit what I'm trying to do, but I feel like it still needs to be covered, And so that's really what I was just constantly looking for ways to tell stories in new ways. I was like writing, I was writing articles and things, but
so you got to the point where after you'd been doing that and you made some wonderful journalist friends, you though were feeling like you were hitting your head against a wall because you felt like some of the stories that you were super passionate about people weren't telling them. And that was frustrating for you.
It's frustrating. And I know that, our stories are very similar, I think, in that way, where there are similar facets where, sometimes you can pitch a story and it can be the best possible story, and the network doesn't want to pick it up, or, somebody's boss doesn't want to do it. And so I just found myself getting more and more frustrated. And then, or you pitch a story and they cover it in a completely backwards, political, divisive way. Yeah. And so, and I want to say this too, because I think that the media gets a lot of flack at times where people are like, oh, they have an agenda, they're doing this, they, edit things and they make it look like this. The reality is, and better than anybody, TV, you have 30 seconds to tell a story sometimes, or 15 seconds to tell a story. And so I get it. Like, sometimes the media just doesn't have an opportunity to tell the story, or they don't have the bandwidth to tell the story in the way that it deserves. And so I just had all these things going through my head. And I was like, I just don't think that I want to start something where people can tell their authentic stories. And I just kept going back to women. I felt like there needed to be a space for women and girls to tell their authentic stories that isn't political, that isn't politicized, that isn't divisive, but really focuses on commonality. How can we come together on different topics? How can we come together on issues? And so around that same time of restlessness, I was like, I can't do that in DC. Like, DC is just automatically going to be politicized. I need to leave. And my family's from Michigan. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to pack up my bags. I had no plans whatsoever, Brooke. I was like, called my sister. One of my sisters had her fly out to DC. We packed up a U-Haul and drove all my stuff back to Michigan. And I put it in storage. And I was like, I
And
don't know what
whoa. I mean, this is a, we can laugh about it now, Kate, but this is a giant leap for you.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, was it one thing? I mean, I imagine it was an accumulation of things and frustrations and desires and listening to your inner knowing or your yearning to tell those women authentic stories. But, can you just, I'm going to push you a little bit more. Take me deeper inside that decision and were there many tears shed, or was it just like this aha moment for you where you knew you needed to go to Michigan and you needed to do this, and damn it, like, get me the hell in a car and a train or on a plane, because I got to do the thing starting now.
Yeah, it's interesting, like thinking back on those moments. I think it was a mix of different things, but the best things that I've ever done in my life, Brooke, and I will say this, are the things that I've just like sucked it up and jumped, right? Like Ireland, it was like 3 weeks. I got accepted, quit my job, sold my car, and moved to Ireland, moved across the world. And so this was another one of those, one of my friends likes to call it the suddenly moments, like where it's a suddenly, like, I just know, it's like you feel so convicted. And it was terrifying at the same time because I was leaving my cushy DC job. I could have stayed there. I could have kept climbing the ladder. I could have settled in DC, honestly, and just continued to work in PR. And I was happy there. Like, that's not to say that I wasn't, I was happy. I had a great community there, great friends, great bosses, great people that I worked with. So it wasn't any kind of, there wasn't anything bad that happened that like made me leave. And I think that's
just
important.
felt called.
Yeah. You just feel this, like this call or this push. And I wasn't totally sure. And then my dad actually gave me really good advice too, as I was like filling up the U-Haul, and I was I was upset because it's like, I'm leaving everything that I knew for so long. So many of my college friends still live in DC and I miss them. It was like nice to just on any Sunday morning have somebody you can call up and go to brunch, and spend all day at brunch, spend 10 hours just sitting around talking about life and debating things, whatever.
Created a community. You had people.
Yeah.
You had your huddle. Yes.
Right. My huddle. Exactly. And so my dad gave me the best advice as I'm like loading up my U-Haul, and I was crying and I was upset, but I was also like excited because I knew that something big was happening in my life and I didn't know what it was going to be. And my dad said, you know what? If you move all your stuff back in the U-Haul and you change your mind and you decide a week from now, a month from now, a year from now that you want to move back to DC, guess what we'll do? We'll load the U-Haul back up and drive you right back. So like, don't freak out about it. Such a good dad. And there are moments in our lives like that where I was 34, I think, when I was, or 33, 34, when I was moving back to Michigan. And it was kind of a now or never thing. I was like, we don't have, hundreds of years. We might have, if we're lucky, like Betty White. And I know you were buddies with her, that, maybe with Betty White, we have 99 years, almost 100 years, but we don't have forever in a lifetime. And so, I moved
You needed
back.
to get on with it.
I needed
to get on with it. Yeah. And you knew you could go back if you needed to. Sometimes those little, moments where we need our dads or just our inner selves to tell us, we can always, if this doesn't work out, we can always go back. And so you arrive in Detroit, right? Yeah. So you're in Detroit, you're on your home turf. And did you know then, had One Girl Revolution been birthed in you by the time you arrive in Detroit? Did you know what you'd be doing when you got there, or was it more something that came to you after?
No, it came to me after. So I just kind of like was going with my spirit, where the spirit was leading me. And I was very thoughtful about it, right? Like I'd saved money up. I knew that at some point I was going to move. So I had some savings. Like I wasn't just like picking up and leaving and like, oh yeah, I'll just like go to Michigan or somewhere whimsical and figure it out. But I moved back to Michigan and I was like, you know what? I'll just find some PR contracts to just pay my bills. I have a little nest egg just in case. And, but then I just kept having this kind of thing moving in my soul where it was like, okay, I want to do something for women. What is it? And so when I moved back to Michigan, I thought, maybe I'll start like a school program and go to schools and empower young girls to tell their stories and talk about like, what does it truly mean? We hear all the time about like female empowerment. What does that mean? Or, standing up for what you believe in or speaking up or whatever. And so I was like, maybe I'll start a school program. So I had all these different things. Maybe I'll pitch a story, start pitching stories to media and just kind of do that in my free time about these individual stories that I'm finding. And then, Brooke, I was reading, there's a journalist here called Charlie LaDuff, and everybody has a lot of opinions about Charlie LaDuff, but he wrote this book about Detroit, and it's an autopsy on Detroit. And so I sit down one day and I'm like, when I moved back, I was reading a lot, trying to like just kind of find my purpose again and figure out what my new journey was going to be. This next chapter was going to be. And so I sit down and I'm reading this book about Detroit, and there are two phrases in Latin on Detroit's flag, on their city flag. And it is, there is always hope and it will rise from the ashes. And Brooke, I read those two phrases and it was one of the most life-changing moments of my entire life. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know what I'm supposed to do. One Girl Revolution. And I had thought about One Girl Revolution like 5 years prior, like just the idea that every woman has the power to change the world through her life. And I was like, every woman is a one girl revolution. And every girl is a one girl revolution. And the reality is everybody is a revolution. We all have the power to change the world through our lives. But I really wanted to keep that focus on women and girls in particular. And so I read those two phrases and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to start One Girl Revolution. I'm going to start it as a podcast because my dream for it had always been to be a video series, where it was kind of like, Chef's Table or something, where each episode highlights a different woman and the stories around them and then the people around them. But I was like, I don't have any funding to do that. So I'll just start it as a podcast. Had never done a podcast before, had never done radio before, had always prepped people for interviews, but had never done interviews before. And so I just literally started figuring it out and then started as a podcast, and it's just continued to grow from there.
How did you find the women? How did you find your stories?
I found them. So at first I had started I had a Google Doc that I would just throw stories in if I saw something on Facebook or Instagram, or I was watching the local news and came across a story, or I was watching the national news and came across a story of a woman or girl that was doing something inspiring. And sometimes it was business women that were dedicating their free time to help those experiencing homelessness, or others were, women that had given it all up and then decided to dedicate their lives to a movement or an organization. And so it started as a Google Doc. I still have that Google Doc. I use it from time to time, but I don't really need to anymore because now it's kind of taken on a life of its own, where, I find different stories still in the same ways, but I just reach out to them right away and start conversations on Instagram or Twitter, or set up phone calls with them. And so it's just continued to grow. And then, every woman also leads to so many other amazing women and stories. So, as I've interviewed women, they'll be like, oh, hey, Kate, like a month or two later, you need to interview this person. Yeah, you need to know this person, or this person's doing this. So it really has created this amazing community that's supporting one another. And I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
Is there any one story that really surprised you? Like you thought going in, you were already inspired by the person because of X, but then, when you show up or you're interviewing them or you're speaking to them, it just takes a whole other direction that just blew you away.
I think the coolest thing, Brooke, about podcasts, and I don't think that we talk about this enough in the world, is podcasts are just such an authentic space, like a space for people to be authentically themselves. And so almost every interview, I've kind of been surprised by something. One of my favorite stories, and one that I wasn't expecting to make such a connection, and there wasn't any reason why I think all the stories, I kind of just assume that I'm going to go in and do an interview and then they're never going to care about me or one girl again. Like, cool, we did our interview, bye. And what's happened is now all these women have become friends. Now I've been able to be a support system for them in different things, pitch them out to media if they're working on something in particular. And then they've become friends and support system for me. But the story that really kind of struck me in a particular way is this woman, Najah Bazi. She's from Detroit, a suburb of Detroit, Inkster. and she's a Muslim woman. As anybody who's listening, they might know that Detroit has the largest Middle Eastern population outside of the Middle East. And so I'd read some stories about her. She actually was featured on CNN as one of CNN's heroes. And so I'd seen a little bit about her, but I was like, oh my gosh, she's right in my backyard. Like, I need to reach out to her.
Yeah.
And so Najah was a nurse. She is a nurse, but she was a practicing nurse in the 90s. And she told the story about this refugee family was here, and they had just had twins in the hospital, and the twins were dying. So the twins weren't going to be able to care. Like, they had some sort of terminal illness and they weren't going to survive. So Najah in 1996 goes to their house, and she just to do a home visit and make sure they had everything that they needed. And she walks in, and there's a laundry basket on the floor with towels that still had tags on them. So the family had obviously gone to the grocery store, bought a laundry basket and then towels that still had tags in them, threw them in the basket. And that's where the two little babies were dying in this basket. She told me the story, Brooke, and I had never heard this story before. I'd like read a lot about her. I'd seen some things, but it just goes back to the point of like, if there's not an authentic space or a space where people can tell these longer stories, they just don't get told. Right.
Yeah.
And so she had a 3-minute spot on CNN for CNN Heroes, and they didn't tell this story. And so she's telling me this story, and I'm like sitting there like, what's happening? And so she goes, and she was like, I just felt like that family deserved, and those babies deserve dignity. And it was my responsibility at that moment to make sure that those babies died in a cozy bed with cozy blankets that were clean and fresh, and that family had everything that they needed. So Najah starts calling everybody that she knew and was like, hey, does anybody have a baby crib? Hey, do you have a couch? Because the family also, because they were a refugee family, they were in an empty apartment. They didn't even have a chair to sit in. And so they just had this laundry basket with the towels. And so within an hour, Najah had gotten furniture for the entire apartment. The little babies had their cozy little bed. They were wrapped up. She sat with them until the babies unfortunately passed away. And so that's how her organization, Zaman International, started. And Zaman International works with marginalized women and children, many of the refugees and immigrants that are coming through or coming into Michigan. They work with them to make sure that they have job skills training, that they can get jobs if they need them, that they have all kinds of programs that they work with women and children in particular. And then they furnish their houses, or they get them clothes or whatever they needed. And so I tell that story because Najah's was one that I wasn't expecting the magnitude, and there wasn't any reason why I wasn't expecting it. But that story, her story, all the stories that about Zaman International has just absolutely changed my life.
Oh my gosh. And to think that that is one of so many stories you have listened to, and just sitting as, holding space with women like that just does something to you, as a human, just in terms of how you make decisions moving forward, and how sensitive and the dignity that she was able to bring to that family. Just, oh, bless her. You are One Girl Revolution is a multimedia platform. You have more than 137 episodes of the podcast. You utilize social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, some video content on YouTube and social media, but you're branching into the docu-series space. You talked a bit ago about, all right, this is starting as a podcast, but I have bigger dreams. And so you are an Emmy Award nominated producer, creator with your documentary, The Girl Inside. And you have your next documentary coming out soon. But let's just talk about The Girl Inside. What tell me about it. What's it about?
Yeah. So The Girl Inside, it was one of those stories that I just stumbled upon, and I had heard about this professor that taught a storytelling class. It's called Storytelling as a Healing Art, to incarcerated women within Cook County Jail. And I'd heard about Dr. Laura Biaggi. And then I have a friend who owns a production company, and he was like, hey, if you can get clearance to get into Cook County Jail, we'll come and film it, which is crazy. Like, what a gift. So behold, shout out to them out of Chicago. And so it took me 9 months, which is profound, because The Girl Inside does feel like my baby, my child at times. But it took us 9 months to get clearance. And so we took a film crew into Cook County Jail with Dr. Laura Biaggi one day, and interviewed her and 5 incarcerated women. A couple of them are formerly incarcerated now, which is amazing. And I've stayed in touch with them about their life and about their purpose, not about what they did. One of the questions that I got when The Girl Inside came out was, well, what did these 5 women do? Like, why are they in there? And that was never important to me, Brooke. Like, what is important to me is who they are as people. And so The Girl Inside is kind of a 10-minute documentary where it highlights Dr. Biaggi's life-changing class, but then also the lives and purpose and power that these women, all 6 of them, including the professor, hold within them. And so, yeah, what a gift to be nominated for an Emmy. I still can't believe it. I remember like finding out that we got nominated, and like my mind was just blown because, like I shared, the One Girl Revolution was just this little glimmer of an idea, and I never thought that it would continue to grow how it has.
And just again, to underscore, it took you 9 months to get access. I mean,
Yes.
people who are listening, I've been a journalist for over 20 years. And when you try to get access to anything from a prison to an aircraft carrier to, a celebrity, it can take a while. But to have the persistence, as you are working for yourself on your own without a machine behind you to make it happen and to tell that story and then to be recognized, just huge. Congratulations to you,
Thank
Kate.
you so
That's
much.
huge. So you do all right with that one. So you decide to do a second short documentary, which is coming out soon. Give us a little tease.
Yeah. So the second documentary, people are always asking me like if One Girl Revolution is going to just solely focus on incarceration, which that obviously is a topic that I care deeply about. And we've done a lot on the podcast with it. This story definitely has a thread, kind of linking The Girl Inside to this next one. So this next one is Caitlyn Cullen is a woman out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and she opened a restaurant in one of the worst neighborhoods in Milwaukee. And she started hiring people that no one else would hire. So she's hiring people that are coming out of jail and prison, pregnant women, kids that are being targeted by drug dealers, anybody that just needs a job or needs a shot. Yeah. She hires them. And then the coolest thing about it is she started this kind of program where if they want to get into management, she gives them opportunities for management. If they want to become a sous chef, she teaches them how to become a sous chef. And then she helps them transition out. But the coolest thing is it's to other jobs and other restaurants. But the coolest thing about it, Brooke, is they've built this family that supports one another. If somebody needs driver's training, somebody from the restaurant will take them out and teach them how to drive. The other day I saw on Facebook, she was raising money because a single mom that she works with has 2 little kids and needs a car. And so they found a car for her and they just were fundraising for that. So they really have built this support system, but so the restaurant alone was the story. That was the original story that we wanted to tell. We filmed there before COVID, this bustling restaurant, everybody's sitting at the counter, drinking cocktails, whatever, eating all the food and interviewing some of the people that she works with and how inspiring she is, how great this community is. Well, then COVID hits. Mm-hmm. COVID hits March 2020, as we all know. And we had not finished filming that documentary. We needed to go back and film some B-roll. And we were like, oh yeah, we have plenty of time. Well, then COVID hits and Caitlyn's story gets even more profound. So we have this first part of the documentary is going to be all about the restaurant. The second part is all about what she and that community did during COVID. And just to give you a little tease, they ultimately had closed down the restaurant to all customers. And then they were only feeding people in need. And it started out with 80 meals and they posted it on Facebook, and then it continued to grow and grow and grow. And I'll tell you, this is how it's going to end, is she ended up feeding 115,000 people during the pandemic.
Kate.
And her story is the restaurant still is not open. They're only feeding people in need. So, and we're in, January 2022. So her restaurant has been closed for almost 2 years. So that's going to be the next documentary. I can't wait. It's going to be like, all the bustling restaurant on the one side, and then there's going to be a very dramatic shift March 2020, and then show the COVID side of it. But she's kept tons of other restaurants afloat because she was hiring them to make meals because people were donating money, including the city of Milwaukee. The city of Milwaukee gave her a big grant because she was doing a better job feeding their people than they were. And they told her that. And so anyways, I think that that's going to be a really powerful documentary. And that is a story that no one else has told like that. No people in Milwaukee they know of that story, but this is going to be really exciting. If you're enjoying this episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, please leave us a review and share this with your friends and family. The One Girl Revolution podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, or wherever you are listening to the podcast right now. Please subscribe, leave us a review, and share.
Listening to you and feeling this from you and hearing her story, and it's always just, when you think you're going into something as a journalist or as a creative, and then all of a sudden, boom, the story zigs and zags and you follow it. And just let me zoom out like 30,000 feet out from One Girl Revolution. Where are you taking all of this? You've been doing this for 3 years, and also just what impact do you hope to have on the world?
I think I'll start with your second question. My hope is that me and One Girl Revolution, the impact that we can have is that we can just inspire every person to look at their own life and look at their own purpose and say, I matter. I think in the world, a lot of times we can feel forgotten about, we can feel ignored, marginalized, like nobody cares about us. But the reality is we are as unique as our fingerprint. And sometimes we need to be reminded of that. And we are the only person that can leave the imprint from our fingerprint on the world. And so I really hope that this encourages that for every single person, and also gives these women and these organizations that are changing the world every single day a space to tell their stories and to encourage other people to get involved in the work that they're doing. But then to your first question, where do I hope that One Girl goes from here? I mean, we'll continue the podcast. We have a lot of exciting things planned for 2022, hopefully beyond. I mean, there's just so many stories to be told. I don't have enough bandwidth. It's a bandwidth issue at this point. Would love to be doing a daily podcast, but just keeping the podcast going and looking for stories. We have the second documentary coming out. My hope and dream has always been to do more documentaries. I'd love to do a documentary series or mini series, do one on incarceration, do one on elderly women, do one on children. I mean, there's so many different stories and different ways to tell these stories. And so I want to continue to find innovative ways to tell stories. And I hope to grow this multimedia platform to include other things too. So I hope that everybody just keeps an eye on what we're doing. And I'm so grateful for everybody's support thus far.
To bring this conversation full circle, and we're close to closing. I'm thinking of the little girl with the red rash on her face who just wanted to be seen. And here you are all these years later, focusing on some of these women who perhaps feel, more marginalized or don't feel seen and don't feel heard, and you are empowering them. And I'm just wondering why you care so much.
I think that, I sometimes I don't know how to answer that question, honestly, Brooke. Sometimes I'm like, why do I care so much? Especially in the days when I can't, I don't have the bandwidth to do everything that I need to do in a day. And a podcast is a lot alone, and then on top of that, I'm doing these documentaries, and then I'm running all our social media channels. And so sometimes it's like, why do I care so much? But I care so much because I see so much good in the world. And I don't think that a lot of people see that goodness in the world. And there are so many amazing people that are doing incredible things. And it doesn't have to be the big things, right? It doesn't have to be that you founded an organization. It doesn't have to be that you have a podcast, or that you are doing documentaries, or that you might just be a quote unquote normal everyday person in your eyes. You might just be like, who am I? Like, what do I have to give? But I care so much because I want every single person to see that even in the little things, we can make a massive impact. Even just simply smiling at someone in the coffee shop, you never know what that's going to do to that person. And so I really want to continue to build an army, build a revolution, a revolution of love, that people know that they matter and know that they are loved, and that they can make a difference in the world. So that's why I do what I do every single day.
And for the people listening who are like, I want to be part of Kate's army, I want to be part of One Girl Revolution. How can they do that? How can they get involved in the work you're doing?
Yeah, there's so many different ways. I always tell people that the easiest free way to get involved is to follow us on social media. Subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. Those are easy, free ways. Share anything that we post on social media. If you see a quote that inspires you, or you listen to a podcast episode and it inspires you, share that on social media and share One Girl Revolution with other people. Help us continue to grow. One Girl Revolution, a couple of months ago, we just got a nonprofit. We just got nonprofit status. So we have that all set up. So if people want to give financially to support our work, everything goes back to support these other women and these causes and to elevate women. So it's all going right back into the work that we're doing so they can do that.
Will you put that link in the show notes?
Yeah,
I'm taking on the podcaster role here. Yeah. We're going to add that link to the show notes, guys.
Put the link in the show notes. That'd be awesome. Let's see. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Watch The Girl Inside if you haven't seen it. I mean, there's just so many different ways, but it just starts in the little things. So whatever you can do to help us continue to grow, continue to thrive, we're just so grateful.
Last question. If you could leave women around the world with one message, Kate, what would it be?
Brooke, this question, everybody that I ask, they always get thrown off by it. And I was like, of all people, I've heard this 137 times. I should know how to answer this. But I would just say that you have a purpose. You matter. You're as unique as your fingerprint. If you need to be reminded of that, look at your fingerprint. I know that I sometimes have to look at my own fingerprint and remind myself that I have a purpose in this world, that I matter, that I am loved. Sometimes we can feel like we're not loved by somebody, or we're going through a difficult time, and you are so loved. So many people that love you, and you're not alone. I think a lot of times in this world, we can feel so isolated on social media, in our lives, our daily lives, but you're not alone. We're standing with you. We have a huddle here at One Girl Revolution, an ode to you, Brooke. But just remember that you have a purpose, that you matter, and that you were made to change the world through your life.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Emmy-nominated Kate Bryan of One Girl Revolution. Congratulations on everything just going your way. And I know it's been so much hard work, and I'm sure at times you feel like you are just alone doing this all by yourself, but look at all that, look at all the beautiful fruit that has come from these seeds that you planted sort of on a following your gut and your purpose as you left Washington to move to Detroit. Detroit is lucky to have you. I cannot wait to come find you when we go find my pal over at Shinola, and, and we'll hang out in Detroit. I haven't been there since the presidential debate from a few years ago, but I'm always impressed every single time I come, just how much it's grown and stays true to its roots, but, has also blossomed. So Kate, thank you for honoring me and letting me be the question asker this time and letting me turn the tables. And I wish you the best of luck.
Brooke, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for turning the tables. And I'm just so grateful for you. And I can't wait to see what you have going next. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.